Can you extend an olive branch to Peter Dutton now, though? Is it still not too late? Is there time for you to say, OK, we could remove the words executive government if you come on board? Is there a chance you might be able to offer that during this process? We know the parliamentary committee is looking at it. Are you willing to compromise on that to get the bipartisanship that would boost the chances of the referendum?
Well, Peter Dutton's already declared his position. David Littleproud declared the position of the National Party last year. It is very hard for them to argue they're participating in this committee process in good faith. They've already declared their position, and it's a bit like saying that you're going to run on the field in a footy game and just allow the other team, in this case the no team, to just run through and score tries without trying to tackle them and trying to defend the yes position. We'll be out there advocating for a yes vote. The issue of Parliament and executive government being able to have representations is one that Julian Leeser included as part of the process that he was a part of way back in 2014, so almost a decade ago. So this is not a new proposal. And what we've seen over recent months is Peter Dutton, in every one of his utterances, drawing doubt on constitutional reform, attempting to undermine the prospects of success, raising issues that are designed to create uncertainty and concern over what is really a very simple proposition. The proposition is recognition and consultation. That's what it's about. Consultation with Indigenous people on matters that affect them. And we know that when Indigenous Australians are consulted, we get better outcomes. The voice isn't the end. The voice is the means to the end. The end that we're after here is better outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in life expectancy, in educational outcomes, in health outcomes as well, in reducing the incarceration rates of Indigenous Australians. And we know through the Indigenous Rangers program, through community health programs, through justice reinvestment, the work that the New South Wales government have done in Moree and Burke on justice reinvestment, for example, have been real success stories. The work that Noel Pearson does in Cape York is part of a success story. The work in Arnhem Land of the Yolngu people with the leadership of the late, great Yunupingu are examples of where Indigenous people have that ownership and involvement. You do get better outcomes, and that's what this is about.
But if you could empower the Liberals that want to back it, there are, as you've said, you've alluded to it already today, Liberals that want to back it, and you can empower them by saying, OK, we'll remove executive government just to allay those concerns. Would you be open to doing that?
Well, the legal opinions of people like Justice French and Justice Hayne, former judges, and in Justice French's case, former Chief Justice of the High Court, have made their views very clear that this is a legally sound proposition. Anne Toomey, perhaps Australia's leading constitutional lawyer, has done the same. And the Liberal Party members like Bridget Archer will continue to campaign for yes. The Premier of Tasmania will be a strong advocate for yes. And in a bit over a week's time, I'll be with him in Tasmania when Pat Farmer, a former Liberal member of the House of Representatives, who will be conducting a run around Australia to support the Yes campaign, running something like 80 kilometres a day, every day for months, campaigning. We have here the business community, the faith groups, we have trade unions, we have sporting organisations, non-government organisations will all be out there campaigning for yes. This has never been about the politicians. This is about the people of Australia having a say and reaching out, accepting the gracious, generous offer of Indigenous Australians for constitutional recognition and consultation, and there's no overreach here. The body that they're asking for won't be a funding body. It won't run programs. It won't have right of veto. It won't interfere with the normal functioning of Parliament. The primacy of Parliament is ensured by this proposition, and that's why I'm very confident that Australians will vote yes.
A recent poll suggested a dip in support in Queensland and that could be the holdout state. Anastasia Palaszczuk said in response to that poll, she said, I think the federal government needs to really step up into that space and explain it. And I'm quite sure that's going to be coming. She said, I should say, I think people are after the detail, and I can understand there would be some hesitancy. Do you plan to step up in Anastasia Palaszczuk's words, and how will you do that, particularly in Queensland?
Well, the first thing we'll be doing is running an information campaign about the nature of referendums. The truth is that many Australians have never looked at their constitution, let alone considered a constitutional change. None of your listeners under the age of 40 have ever voted in a referendum. There hasn't been one held this century. So it's not surprising that there is a lack of consideration because people haven't had that front and centre. But there is an enormous amount of detail out there already. What you have now is the proposal in the legislation. You also have a document with 8 key principles put forward by the referendum working group about the way that the voice would operate. And I would encourage your listeners and Australians to have a look at the question which will be asked, which is simply this. A proposed law to alter the Constitution to recognise the First Peoples of Australia by establishing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. Do you approve this proposed alteration? That's the question that people will vote for. And then the detail is there in the constitutional change as well that's being proposed in recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the First Peoples of Australia, and then 3 clauses. That's the recognition, and then the how is there shall be a body to be called the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander voice. The voice may make representations to the Parliament and the Executive Government on the Commonwealth on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. And then the key clause as well, the 3rd clause, the Parliament shall, subject to this Constitution, have power to make laws with respect to matters relating to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice, including its composition, functions, powers and procedures. So a very clear proposal before the Australian people, a clear proposal that has received such widespread support, as I said, across business, across the Labor movement, across faith groups. This week I attended on Wednesday night an iftar as part of breaking the fast with the Islamic community, coming together with strong support. I've met with, and I know that at events around Australia this weekend, one of the things that will happen before AFL, NRL games, church services for Easter is that you'll have an acknowledgement of country, showing respect for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and the fact that we share this great continent with them, and the fact that they're the oldest continuous culture on earth should be something that we're proud of and celebrate. And that's really what constitutional recognition is about. It's about celebrating issue, that and also giving them a voice and consulting them on matters that affect them.
On the sport point that you made there, I just wanted to reference that because the timing here is sometime between October and December. We've got the NRL Grand Final. I know a great love of yours, many of our viewers, big AFL fans, NRL fans. To me, it looks like a ready-made launch for the final weeks of the Voice campaign. If you can get the likes of Latrell Mitchell, Buddy Franklin, these great Indigenous footballers, both codes, backing it at these major events, is that how you see this working into the final stages of the Voice campaign, with those two big set-piece events in the two codes that this nation loves?
Well, of course, the football codes, both the NRL and the AFL, but also the Football Federational, soccer, as we more commonly call it here, rugby union, they've all been very supportive of Indigenous recognition for a long period of time. And even before then, of course, we'll have the Indigenous rounds in both of those sports, which will be a celebration of Indigenous Australians and their contribution to those sports. I know from speaking to a number of the NRL and AFL players, both past and present, that they will be active in putting their views in support of constitutional recognition. And I expect that not just them, but Tennis Australia have been supportive, Cricket Australia, all of the sporting codes, the basketball organisation, Paddy Mills has been out there
big names
campaigning. I would expect that it's not to me to speak for them, but I would be surprised if you didn't see a range of figures out there saying that it is time for recognition. And we need to bear in mind as well, for those who say, oh, well, just put it off until everyone in politics agrees. Well, this is now, will be up to the Australian people. And if not now, when? People voted on a republic in Australia last century, at the end of the 1990s. And some of the people during that campaign, you'd recall Kieran saying, oh, well, I support the republic, but I don't support this particular model. I want to wait for something better. Well, guess what? Something better hasn't come around in their view, and that is an issue that's not about to be changed anytime soon. So people have an opportunity here to seize this moment. It should be a moment of national unity. I certainly hope that it is. It's one that will show we're a more confident, forward-looking nation, that we are about our future, that we don't leave people behind. We are about reconciling and going forward together. And that is, to me, a positive thing. And I'm optimistic about the future for this great country. But we need to be always looking forward to that future and helping to shape that future in a positive way. And one way we can do that is by recognising Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in our nation's constitution.
Prime Minister, I know you've been very generous with your time. I have a few questions to wrap up. The concern around the Voice, I've got Barnaby Joyce on the program a little later. He's saying, and many others have said it as well, called on the government to release the Solicitor General advice. Would you be willing to do that in the lead up to the referendum? Is that something you'd do to just placate and ease people's concerns?
Well, the Solicitor General's advice, as Barnaby Joyce knows, I mean, he was a bloke who was Deputy Prime Minister twice. That was one show that shouldn't have had a sequel, but it did. And he knows that while he served, they didn't release his cabinet advice to the cabinet. But the Solicitor General's views are very clear of support for this change, that it's legally sound, and through the process, he will, I'm sure, take the opportunity through the Attorney General to make that position clear.
Okay, so that's interesting, a reassurance coming from the Solicitor General at some point. And one of the giants in your party in this area, of course, is Pat Dodson. I know you were very emotional and understandable given the gravity of the issue we're talking about with him when you announced the wording. He's taken a leave of absence. What's the latest you've got on your well-respected colleague?
Well, Senator Dodson is, of course, seen as one of the fathers of reconciliation in this country. Patrick has some health issues that he has to deal with. That has to be a priority. So he's taken indefinite leave, and I'm sure on behalf of all Australians, as well as my colleagues across the parliament, Patrick Dodson is someone who is so widely respected. We just wish him all the best to overcome these health issues. He has indicated to me he'll still be doing a few radio interviews and still certainly participating in the process as much as he can, but he won't be able to travel because he has to prioritise getting that health treatment, and I wish him all the very best. He is just a great Australian.
Well, and on behalf of all of us at Sky, I wish him all the best, a speedy recovery to Pat Dodson. And finally, a different issue, but one that's of a huge importance to our country. We've seen the drama in the United States. Trump continues to cause a lot of headlines. Does this worry you about the future of our AUKUS deal when you see the prospect of a possible Trump return?
No, look, our relationship with the United States is a relationship between nations, between peoples, not just between leaders. And Australia and the United States share common values. I work very closely with President Biden, and I'm very much looking forward to welcoming President Biden here to Australia in just next month now that we're at Easter time in May for the Quad Leaders meeting. He will be an honoured guest in our country.
Prime Minister, thanks. Happy Easter to you, Jody and Nathan. Thanks for your time.
Thanks very much, Kieran. And can I wish all of your listeners a happy Easter, and for those people of faith as well, particularly of the Christian faith, it is a very holy time, and I wish you a holy Easter as well.